I'm not sure why it took George Romero 2 whole decades before making another entry in his Dead franchise. Think about it. In the years following Day of the Dead, zombie movies came and went. Most of them were shameless knockoffs or blatant parodies. Some were successful, most were forgettable, and almost all of them used the same naming scheme: Something of the Dead. In 2005, there was even an attempt to cash in on Romero's franchise when an unrelated sequel to Day of the Dead was released direct-to-video. I have seen it just for curiosity's sakes, and while it wasn't absolutely abysmal, there's a reason why no one talks about it. It's still pretty bad. So maybe it was all of these unofficial Dead movies that sparked Romero's interest in continuing his own series. It's kind of profound to think that there was such a big gap between Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead, and yet in 1 decade we've seen 3 brand new Romero Dead films, and this one's probably the best of the new ones. It pretty much continues the story where the others left off. The zombie plague is still spreading, and upper-class society has locked itself away in a virtual paradise called Fiddler's Green that has yet to become tainted by the virus. A group of rebels led by John Leguizamo makes its way to the city while being pursued by the zombies, which is a different direction for the series. In the past films, the zombies seem to be incidental hindrances, simply there to annoy the heroes. In this one, the zombies actually have a vendetta against the humans. They're pretty much separate from the humans, who spend most of the time fighting each other. Eventually, Leguizamo threatens the big boss of Fiddler's Green, a politician named Kaufman, played by Dennis Hopper. This is an interesting connection because the last time we saw these two together was in the ill-fated Super Mario Bros. Movie, in pretty much the same roles. The film actually moves at the pace of Dawn of the Dead. It has an epic feel to it, and there's an actual story being told revolving around Leguizamo's extortion attempts against Hopper, and the zombies continuing to breach the city despite it being heavily fortified by armed sentries and an electric fence. The zombies also seem to have a leader in the form of a former gas station attendant turned zombie, Big Daddy, played by Eugene Clark. Clark not only learns how to communicate with other zombies, but also attempts to handle a firearm, so he's very reminiscent of Bub from Day of the Dead. That's what's so intriguing about these films. While they don't seem to follow any kind of chronology, Romero seems to transfer over ideas and themes from past films. It started in Night of the Living Dead when we first learned of the spreading epidemic. It was that film that established that the only way to kill a zombie was by a serious head injury. Then in Dawn, we learned that even in death, zombies will attempt to perform the same habits that they performed in life. In Day, attempts were made at making the zombies more civilized, so it would only seem natural that in Land, that concept would be carried over yet again, resulting in a very intelligent zombie that tends to hold a grudge. Eventually, Big Daddy finds a way into the city, by swimming. This movie really isn't as memorable as the past films, and that's partially because it is so recent, but it tends to be heavy in style. Seeing a horde of zombies surface from the water's edge, Rambo style, is satisfyingly eerie, and while the makeup isn't as gruesomely over the top as it was in Day of the Dead, they still get the job done with some exceptional death sequences. All that blood and guts is still present and accounted for. This is one of those zombie movies that attempts some things with CGI, which I've always been opposed to in a horror film. The CGI effects generally draw attention to themselves, but I can at least see what they were going for. They tried giving most of the zombies their own unique looks, and I guess some of it they decided to try with CG to go the extra mile. I still feel it was unnecessary, but it isn't a huge flaw either. It's also nice to see it pay homage to the earlier films. Toward the end, Tom Savini makes a brief appearance as a biker zombie. According to Romero, this is actually the same character from the end of Dawn of the Dead, still walking around since that time. This one was met with mixed reception. It was great to see another official Romero film after such a long period of time passed, but it doesn't really stand out from any of the other good zombie films. Like Dawn, the characters aren't as memorable, and it has a big-budget Hollywood feel to it that doesn't feel as true to the series as it could have been had it been developed independently. Sometimes less money is more. Try making sense of that. Now, is it a good movie? Absolutely. Whether you buy it or rent it, you'll be getting your money's worth. It's almost on par with the originals and succeeds in trying new things, like having an army of zombies marching toward the last human outpost on Earth. The makeup is pretty fun to watch, and after having to put up with a slew of copycats for 2 decades, it's a breath of fresh air to see something done from a true master of horror.